to another episode of Ballast Book Launch. I'm your host, the CEO of Ballast and Blue Bloom Books, Andy Symonds, and I'm very honored to have with me today the author of Tip of the Spear, It's Not What You Think, Rodney Magallan, former SEAL, former CIA operative, former U.S. Marshal, former thin guy.
Yeah.
I debated whether or not to say that, but Rodney is such a ball breaker that I absolutely had to. Rodney, it's a joy to have you here today, man. I've loved working on your book. Tip of the Spear is an absolute must-have for really anybody leading an organization, anybody in an organization. So thank you so much for being here today.
Andy, thank you so much for having me. And anyone out there who's thinking about publishing a book, Ballast is the place to go. I mean, it has been a joy. And again, they've let me make all the decisions, but the professional insight and recommendations. But at the end of the day, they were my decisions, and I couldn't have worked with anyone more professional than your group. Thank you.
Well, appreciate it. Now that we have that out of the way, podcast over.
Well, hold on a second.
No.
I got cool shit to say.
Yeah, you do have. You do have cool. You do have cool shit to say.
That's why I'm fat.
No, I mean, so let's start. Now that we made fun of you a little bit, let's brag about you a little bit too. Because one thing that I've noticed in working with you is that humility.
Yeah.
When you talk about someone who's been there, done that, it's Rodney. And so I'll brag on a few things and a few pieces of your background, to coming from very humble roots that we'll get into, to joining the Navy when you were 17, becoming a SEAL at 19, going to SEAL Team 6, becoming a CIA operative, joining the U.S. Marshals. I mean, you've done it all, life of public service. You've truly been there and done that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how all that started, those meager beginnings in Washington State?
Absolutely. I appreciate that, Andy. Family of 7, 6 boys, 1 girl.
Poor mother.
We were no HBO, man. They didn't have any cable or HBO. So what else they gotta do?
Work. You worked.
I know, right?
You worked.
Well, my dad was working on it. That's why I kept having kids. Until he got it right. He finally had a girl.
Was she the last one?
No, she's my twin sister. She's my twin sister. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Her name was Melissa. Yeah. But 7 kids. We were migrant workers. I think because my dad was tasked with finding groups to work in the fields, and so he had his little group. Now, I was one of the younger ones. So my older brothers were the ones that definitely did the heavy lifting during those days when my parents were together. We would move during the winter because we were up in Washington State. Very, very beautiful state. I grew up in Grandview, Washington, 98930. Shout out to everyone over there.
Represent.
Yeah, absolutely. And still beautiful, and still farmland, and I mean, some of the best produce you're going to ever get. A lot of hops too. So all you beer drinkers out there, that's where it comes from.
Comes from Washington State.
Yeah, absolutely. Yakima Valley. But we would leave to Texas in my early years in the winter when my dad was still around, so that my older brothers and my father would work in the cotton, and us younger ones would just roam around and go and kick cactus until one of them actually poked us in the toe, and go to school and do stuff like that. But come back after that and work again. It was around 1980 is when my parents split up, and so my father went back to Texas. I believe that's where he was from, originally South Texas. My mother stayed up in Washington State because her family, siblings and whatnot, and her mother, they resided in Washington State.
And your mom was born in Mexico, correct?
She was, yes.
And your grandfather on your father's side immigrated to the U.S. from Mexico, correct?
No, the border moved on them.
Okay.
Yeah. But,
they just straddled it back and forth?
Yeah, absolutely. And Alsadua is my grandfather's name. So anyone down in Granjeno, Texas,
okay,
McAllen, Texas, Mission, Texas, Granjeno, Texas, Alzaldúa, Magallan. That's how you say it in Spanish.
I'll have to take your
Yeah,
word for it.
that was all family land, both sides of the river.
Oh,
And
wow.
the way I understand it is after the war, I forget which one it was, but Mexico lost. And so all the land on both sides of the river, my great grandfather, I believe it was great grandfather, great great grandfather, donated it to the church so that the U.S. wouldn't take it.
Mhm.
So you see Alzaldúa Park, both sides. You see the Alzaldúa Bridge. There's a new bridge that goes across
Wow.
into Mexico.
Named after your family.
Yeah, it didn't do me any good. I
Yeah.
grew up poor as shit.
And you were out in those fields from the age of 14 or so, right?
From before then.
Before then.
Yeah, when I was 14 is when I actually started paying taxes because I got a job as a janitor's assistant.
Right.
And working there in Grandview, Washington.
Doing whatever you could to help out the family. So,
Absolutely.
So you knew your path, and so growing up, what was it that you wanted to be?
So I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a professional.
Mhm.
I wanted to be, excuse me, a doctor or a lawyer because when my parents split up, and it was just my mother, and then us, my sister and my younger brother Stevie, pretty much in the house, and we're on welfare, and just trying to scratch out a living as best we could. My mother didn't have a lot of kind words to say about me.
You alluded to that in your book, that it wasn't exactly a loving household.
No, it wasn't. And I'm not saying that they were demons or monsters or anything. I think is a product of the time, right? The way you discipline your kids is by beating them, right? It's going to hurt.
No, but
yeah. Well, back then, it's like the old. There's going to hurt me more than you. As they started spanking you, right?
I disagree. That hurt.
I agree too. It's just like, no, I don't believe you because you're not crying like I am.
That hurt a lot, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was the times.
That was the times. Yeah, that was the times.
And
there's movies about it. So I don't want to say it was just my family. There was a lot of families that grew up like that. But we were definitely poor. We didn't have a lot of money. I vividly remember in school because we were on free lunch and friends would, hey, let me get a punch off your ticket, because they forgot theirs was all full and whatnot. And I'm like, sure, man, come on up. And then the lunch lady had to, they can't use your ticket, right? It's like embarrassing. Well, why can't you use that? Because you're on free lunch.
Well, and hopefully they'll give you more.
Yeah. So, the stuff you don't realize that it's just how it was, right? But great programs, right? Because I didn't starve,
right?
And and the lunch lady wasn't mean about it, but it's just so.
But so those we'll call them traumatic experiences, and you allude to that in your book, In Tip of the Spear.
Yeah.
You allude to those traumatic experiences, and you don't look at it as being a victim. You don't wallow in it. You actually what you write about is that you looked at it as fuel. I mean, you looked at it to help you better yourself. So talk a little bit about that philosophy. When did you realize that, hey, I'm not gonna cry about the tough upbringing that I've had. I'm actually gonna use it to make myself and my family better.
Right. So from a young age, I think us three younger kids in the family, and the older boys too. I mean, they got to go scratch out their own living, and so we realized that hey, I got to depend on myself. I do.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And don't misunderstand when I say, hey, yeah, there's tons of people who would love to help you, and accept that help. But at the same time, if you don't turn inward on yourself first as the first solution to anything that you need to solve, then you set yourself up for failure.
Definitely.
And that's what we learned at a young age, right? It's if I wanted to do X, then what does Rodney need to do? Okay, and if I get to the point where I've exhausted all my solutions within myself, then go and start looking for help.
And so you realized, it sounds like pretty early on in high school, that the Navy could be how you could look to inside yourself for how you could better your life. And And it's a funny story.
Yeah.
Maybe you can talk about that. That you
Yeah,
anybody who's ever been to a military recruiter knows. Well, they know after that they're full of shit.
they are.
And so you got taken for a pretty good bill of goods. It ended up working out well,
Did.
well for you in the long run. But tell us about how the thought process to joining the Navy and how that all went.
Yeah, so I wanted to be a doctor, and I was going to go to the University of Washington for pre-med. It was a minority scholarship. You know, it was not affirmative action. I had good grades, and I was in sports, and I was working. But it was definitely a program that was helping underprivileged children. And some people may look at that and it's like, well, it's still a handout. It's like, well, is it? I mean, if I become a doctor and I open up a business and I start paying more taxes and I start taking care of more people, it's a way to give back. So it's a hand up, not a handout, and that's where I was going. Then the recruiter was walking the halls and he comes up to a group of us, me and my friends.
He must have seen you a mile away.
Yeah,
I can get that kid.
That's a sucker right there. So he starts asking us if we considered going in the military, joining the Navy, and told him, no, I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to University of Washington, and he's like, okay, well, great. How are you going to pay for med school? I'm like, well, I didn't think that through. He's like, well, listen, you could join the Navy and go to the Naval Academy for pre-med, and then go to the Armed Forces Medical School. And the whole time that you're learning to be a doctor, you're getting paid, and you can still help out your mom, because you're helping your mom, right? And I'm like, wow, this sounds like a great deal. Yeah. Where do I sign? And that's why I signed at age 17 before I even graduated high school. Needed my mom's signature to do that, which is crazy, right? Because I loved sports because it kept me out of the house, but my mom would never sign my waivers to play sports.
Yeah, you said she didn't believe in sports.
She didn't believe it. She thought it was a waste of time.
Yeah.
So I had to forge her signature. But she was quick to sign that waiver for me to go in the military at age 17. No, I just giving her shit. God rest her soul. She's in heaven now. But
still getting poked fun of by Rodney from
why
the
not?
afterlife.
Why not?
Love it.
Why not?
Love it. Yep.
Yeah. So I said, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. And man, he was like quick to get me into boot camp. And
which, if I can just pause there, most people, maybe not most people, but most people who've been around the military know that you don't go to boot camp and then go to the go to the Naval Academy. That's not the path.
Yeah, thanks for making me feel like a jackass. But yes, you're absolutely right.
You didn't know that at that time, of course.
Right.
You were 17, so I don't blame you.
Yeah, 17 in a small town in central Washington with not a lot of military presence. Yeah. And and no guidance from my parents to or anyone that they knew that could give me advice.
But again, this is what you're talking about earlier. You didn't cry about it. You didn't claim victimhood. You made the best of it, right? So how long did it take until you realized you show up at boot camp?
Show up in boot camp, and at that time there was a program called the Montgomery GI Bill, and you gave $100 a month for the first 12 months, and then when you after your enlistment, you could use that money. They would times 10 or whatever what you put in for a bachelor's degree for school. And I think at the time as an E1 in 1986, it was like maybe $200 a month I'm making. So I'm
taxes,
like, I'm not giving you $100. I'm sending it to my mom, and she needs money. Besides, I'm going to the Naval Academy, and my company commander, which is like the drill sergeant for making you a sailor, he's like, "You're not going to the Naval Academy." And I'm like, "You don't know. I know better." And I'm in San Diego, California, going to boot camp. So that window closes. Right? I mean, you got to make a decision. He's like, "Do you want this program? We need to sign you up now."
Do you want to put the $100 in?
Yeah, do you want to put it in now? And it's like, okay, a week later, we're not offering you that anymore.
Right.
You can't do it. So about another couple weeks go by, and I'm learning more and more about the Navy, and he was absolutely right. I'm not going to the Naval Academy.
You forgot about that, getting the congressman's letter and
absolutely
all the other requirements,
recommendations, and talking to an officer recruiter instead of an enlisted recruiter.
Right.
So so I start shifting focus, and it's like I'm stuck. I signed for 3 years. it was 3 years active and then 3 years reserve is the contract that he had me sign. I did get Corpsman A school as a guarantee. I should have knew something was up because he tried me to go nuke. He's like, hey, your scores are high enough. Why don't you go be a nuke? It's like, because I want to be a doctor. What's wrong with you? But just too much trust, right? And not enough foresight. I got a lot of foresight now. Why are you asking me that question?
You earned it. Yeah.
So I see this. We watch a film called Men with Green Faces.
About Vietnam era
SEALs, SEALs in UDT, and I in my Blue Jackets manual it starts talking about them, but it breaks down the extra pays that they get, jump pay, dive.
So, had you ever heard of the Navy SEALs at this point?
Had no clue.
No clue. You just know that, hey, this program, I can send more money home to mom.
Exactly, 100%.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something, because you bring up a great point. To all my Army brothers out there who hate the fact that the SEALs are getting so much light right now. I grew up on Delta Force. I grew up on Rambo. I grew up on the A-Team. I could go on and on and on and on about all the Army Special Forces movies and TV shows.
Yeah.
The only ones that were actual SEALs back then on TV, and a lot of people didn't know it, was Magnum P.I., and he barely talks about it.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he was. Yeah.
And the other one was... gosh dang it, I forget. But MacGyver.
He was a SEAL?
He was a SEAL as well. And he barely talks about it. He barely talks about it.
I didn't know that. And I used to watch that show. But A-Team, Green Beret.
Green Beret.
Yeah.
Delta Force, jumping motorcycles, Chuck Norris.
The Army guys.
Kicking bad guys' ass.
They started talking, telling stories way before the SEALs.
They did. Yeah. Absolutely. And I love my Army brother. I mean, I swear, I think the first few years in the teams, I felt like I was in the Army because all the medical schools I went to were Army medical schools. But yeah, man, I'm just throwing it out there. It's ebbs and flows, and I'm not saying that one organization is better than the other, but right now you don't hear a SEAL comparing themselves to anyone else.
No, not at all.
It's a dig at my brothers right there, my Army brothers.
Yeah. No, I hear you. But
we laugh over whiskey about it.
And you would have gone to, to become a Green Beret or a Ranger or a Delta if it had been an Army recruiter walking down the hallway that day instead of a Navy recruiter.
Absolutely not, because I wanted to be a doctor.
Well, there's doctors in the Army.
I tell you what though, after 18, when I graduated 18 Delta, I felt like I could. Which is take care of anything.
18 Delta is the Special
Army
Forces.
Special Forces Medical Sergeant's course. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the best. So I all the pays. I'm seeing these extra pays, and I do the math, and it's like, hey, as an E1 over nothing, I'm going to make what an E7, which is a chief in the Navy, and the highest rank in the enlisted rank is an E9. So I'm going to be making what an E7 makes. I want to do this. I want to do it.
You could be the first person to ever become a Navy SEAL for the money.
Right. Absolutely. And people think I'm joking about it. I'm not. That is what motivated me because again, I was going to prove to my mom that I am going to be somebody, that I am somebody, that I am capable, that I'm not going to be worthless, that I'm not worthless, that I'm. Some of the words she would say to me, you're not going to amount to anything, right? Yeah, you're. Stuff like that just motivated me.
You just fuel.
Yeah,
you just fueled them. Wow,
absolutely. And for my family out there, they know it, and I'm not talking back. I'm not saying anything that I haven't talked about already. And like I said, if she had treated me any differently, would I have done what I did? And I don't think I would have.
So you're appreciative of it.
I am.
Yeah,
I am absolutely.
I think there's in my experience, because I do work with a lot of team guys. And special operations folks, there seems to be that in the background, some sort of family issue like that motivates them, drives them. And I think it's the type of personality that you are. Some people shirk from that. Some people, they hide within themselves and they never can get out of their own way. And then other people take that as motivation and do extraordinary things. And obviously you're in the latter category there. So you decide, forget all the cool stuff. Forget about being able to jump out of airplanes and blow shit up. And all the girls at the bar are going to love me because I'm a big, tough Navy SEAL. You said, I want to do this for the money. Yeah. And you got a billet to Buds.
I did.
How old were you when you showed up at Buds?
I was 18. And
18 years
yeah,
old.
and shortly after I classed up with class 143 in December of '86, and then we formally started in January of '87. I turned 19 in January. Yeah.
And tell us about that experience. What was Buds like for you as an 18-year-old?
Yeah, no. So, so I learned in boot camp that if you smoke, then you get a break.
Your motivations for things are amazing. So you became a smoker?
I started smoking in boot camp, and then that carried on in corps school. So hospital corpsman school was in San Diego as well. And yeah, man, I'm all cool. I'm smoking. And in the planes back then, you sat in I want to sit in the smoking section. You'd be in the back of the plane, lighting up.
Yeah, how'd that go at Buds? Did they give you smoke
I,
breaks on the grinder?
I swear to God, I thought if I had a tail, I probably would have puked it out my mouth because I was puking so hard. My first run, I got gooned. It's a goon squad. Is when you fall out of a run, there's instructors waiting for you, and they just start hammering the dog crap out of you. I'm trying real hard not to use swear words. They start hammering the dog crap out of you. And then it's all races and more burpees and 8-count bodybuilders and hit the surf and get wet and get sandy and start doing it. And then, okay, now there's a race, and whoever wins that race, you get the privilege to catch up to the class that's still running away from you, right? And if you're that slow, there's like multiple goon squads, right? Where you just won this goon squad, now you can catch up to the next goon squad and I got gooned one time. I stopped smoking that day.
First run?
Yes.
First. So you showed up with a smoker's cough to Buds.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And yeah. And every run after that, I puked because I pushed myself so hard because I was not going to get gooned. I swear to God, I was like, I am not getting gooned again. I never want to do that.
Have you ever smoked a cigarette since then?
I have no response to that.
Okay.
No.
But you quit smoking.
I don't think I have. People keep trying to get me to smoke cigars, but
like a good cigar.
Yeah, but rolled up big brown things in my mouth. I'm sorry.
Are you sure?
They just don't sit well with me.
Okay.
I tried.
I'll have to take your. You tried that? I'll take your word for it. So never goon squatted again.
Never gooned again.
You finished to the front of the pack for the rest of the runs.
I tried as hell. Yeah,
okay.
I did, and I would puke my guts out when I got done running.
Every single time.
Every single run. Yeah, and you know what? And I got faster. And that's what you learn in Buds. When you push yourself past your limits, you get faster. You get stronger. You really, really do. Mm-hmm. You stay in that comfort zone, you're not going to improve.
Well, it's almost like iron sharpens iron, like the tip of a spear, if you will.
It's not what you think.
It's not what you think. Yeah. First time we've said the full title, and we will get into that. I think that your kind of whole philosophy around tip of the spear, I think is very interesting. And the reason the subtitle is "It's Not What You Think" is because it's not what you think, right?
It's not.
We talked about this. There's a lot of books. There's a lot of books titled "The Tip of the Spear," and people talk about the tip of the spear a lot of time, but usually they're talking about just what everybody thinks, which is the actual tip of the spear. So we'll leave that as a teaser, and we'll come back to it.
Okay.
So you're forging yourself to become part of the tip of the spear at Buds. Any other funny or interesting Bud stories that you can share?
Yeah, so
I'm sure there's a million.
Howard Wasden was my swim buddy from day one, and we stayed swim buddies together.
Which, if people don't know who that is, he wrote the book SEAL Team 6. He was in Mogadishu.
He was one of the snipers. So there was 4 SEAL snipers that were there when Black Hawk Down and all that happened. Yeah, and
he was your swim buddy.
He was my swim buddy. Yeah, okay. And he was a seasoned sailor. I think he was a second class starting Buds. By then, I was already an E2. Yeah, I got meritoriously promoted out of boot camp because I was in band in high school, so I knew how to march. So I taught my company how to march.
That's a great start. That's a great start for joining the military.
That's
First
it.
thing you got to learn, right?
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Okay.
So yeah, great guy. Unfortunately, he passed away a couple years ago in a plane crash. Yeah. But great guy, and he's written a couple books.
Yeah, yeah. He actually gave a really nice recommendation for one of the books that I wrote.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, really, really good guy. I knew him a little bit.
So when we were going through, Dive phase was third phase, and land warfare was second phase. Okay. And during land warfare, there's a lot of underwater demolition stuff that you do. So you got to dive down to 26 feet, and you got to tie knots, and then you pass that test, and eventually we're tying deck cord down at depth and putting charges, explosive charges underwater. I didn't know anything about clearing your ears, because I mean the deepest I've ever gotten was in the Grandview swimming pool.
Yeah.
You know, what was that?
Like
10 feet deep, right? And very seldom would we go down to the bottom. We had no reason to go down to the bottom. But
so you say clearing your ears mean like holding your nose and
yeah, I know that's what it is now. But
right.
back then
but
I didn't, right? I'm like, I didn't know there was something in my ears that I needed to remove.
Okay. So you're diving down 26 feet without,
and my ears are hurting, and I'm thinking they're supposed to hurt because that's part of training, right? Yeah. It's all about the pain and the suck, and so have no clue about pinching my nose and blowing to equalize the pressure in my middle ear. That's what clearing your ears is. It's not about getting the ickies and oohies out of your ear canal. It's actually,
is that a SEAL term?
It's my term. It's a Rodney term. Just like lickies and chewies, right? You're getting ready to go on a road trip. You need your lickies and chewies. Gotta have them.
Okay.
Gotta have them. That's right.
I'll make a note.
Your num-nums.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have more of these?
Tons.
Okay.
Tons of them.
Sorry I asked.
That's right. So
let's talk more about blowing shit up underwater.
Yeah. So Howard and I are, we're a good swim pair. We're fast and we're good swimmers. Not saying we're finishing first every time, but we're in the front of the pack. We're doing well. So he and I get tasked with laying the trunk line. And the trunk line is we lay the deck cord to every single obstacle so they could tie off, so that when it goes off, then, you know, the haversack that's full of C4 explodes. And there is a left trunk line and a right trunk line. I forget what side that we laid. And explosion goes off, and we're all cheering, right? Because there's this huge, spume of water that goes hundreds of feet in the air. Yeah. You know, we just destroyed coral, whatever. And after the evolution, we get called up to the front to sign what did they call it? It was like a safety chit. It was a bad thing.
Okay.
Right? Like we were getting in trouble.
Like a black mark.
Yeah. But before they had to sign that, they gave us a flight. And when you're out at the island, they give you flights. And a flight is either a wooden pallet that you put on your back and you run a certain distance. But Howard and I, we got a metal flight. And so that is think of a metal pallet, a long one that you put a lot of stuff on an airplane. And we had to run around the airport. So we went all the way around the airport with our flight. We didn't know why we got the flight.
This is a punishment?
Yes. Okay. Yes, it absolutely was. So we do that flight and we get back, and then we get called up to the front to sign our I forget what they called those
safety
chits.
Chit?
Yeah, it's a safety chit. And Howard, I loved Howard because he would stand up. I'm used to just getting browbeat and just taking it. Just take it. And Howard's like, "Why are we signing this?" He's like, "Well, because you guys missed one of the charges on the left side trunk line." And he goes, "We did the right side." And we did. It was the other swim pair that missed it.
That they're sitting there.
Yeah, but we took the punishment, and the instructor's like, oh well, and just rips it up and throws it. It's like, motherfucker.
You owe me a
That's right.
a trip around the flight path with
the
a metal pallet on
the
airport. The metal pallet.
With a metal pallet on our backs, running around it. And so that was funny. Then we go into third phase, which is dive phase. And one of the docs calls me. So I had a lazy eye, right? I mean, it still kind of fades every once in a while, but I was born with one of my eyes crossed. So when they did the surgery to fix it, my right eye, after a while it just fades because it just kind of hangs out, right? I mean, it works, but my vision, the images I see, they don't mesh in my brain. So I focus with my left eye. So my right eye is like, well, if you ain't gonna use me, then I'm gonna go to sleep. So it just kind of
Wow.
just drifts off. One of the funniest things was we're in the pool starting dive phase, and we come out of the pool, and my eyes, kind of like all
Wandering?
wonky. Well, the corpsman support, this is like he think I'm having I'm narking out, right? And like I'm getting some kind of gas embolism.
Yeah.
You know, messed
Jeez.
up. I'm fine. I'm good. It's I was born
This
this way. I was born this way.
Wow.
So the doc's like, hey, you haven't done the O2 toxicity test. And I'm like, what's that? He goes, well, we need to take you down in a chamber, controlled, down to 150 feet. It was either 120 or 150 feet. I forget. It's a long time ago.
Deep.
It's deep. And then we bring you back up to 60 feet, and we have you breathe 100% O2 to see if you're going to have an adverse reaction to the gas. And before we put you on Draeger, which is 100% O2, closed rig. And it was like, okay. So we're going down in the chamber, and my ears are screaming, and I'm sitting there, and they give you hand and arm signals to like tell them to stop or what. And I don't know how deep we got, but we definitely didn't get to our target. And I'm telling them we got to stop because my ears are killing me. It's hurting really bad. And we come up, and the guy's like, well, why aren't you clearing your ears? I'm like, well, what's that? He's like,
Talk about learning on the job.
yeah. He's like, well, you gotta plug your nose and puff a little air into your middle ear because your tympanic membrane is actually getting squeezed in, and that's the pain you're feeling. So you got to blow air in there to equalize it in your middle ear so it doesn't hurt. Man, that's the first I ever heard that. Wow. Like, let's try again. And by then, I'm so squeezed that it's not happening. Yeah. It is not happening. But it was a 3-day weekend. I forget what holiday it was. And the doc's like, look, here's some Sudafed, here's some Afrin. Let's clear up your sinuses as best we can. Take the weekend, drink a lot of water. We're going to test you again when you come back. If you don't pass this test, you're out of the program.
Wow.
You're out. I got down in that chamber.
Yeah.
It felt like there was knives in my ears.
But you were getting down.
Everything was spinning around, and I'm holding on to my nose, just pitching as hard as I can with my eyes closed and just blowing and blowing and blowing. I got down. And then we came back up. I passed the test, but my eyes are all bloodshot. There's all kinds of blood because it just, my sinuses just blew out when we came back up. And I passed. I said, let's continue.
Yeah, it just strikes me when you think about it. I think about myself as an 18-year-old, or you meet an 18-year-old on the street now, just what you were going through when you were 18.
Yeah.
Do you think that helped? Like, almost you're just too dumb to even, I mean, just by definition, an 18-year-old, you barely even know what's going on. Do you think that helped you get through training?
It's not even so much that I was dumb, although thanks for the compliment. It
Patrick
was.
said I was dumb when I was 18, and I don't know if I've gotten much better since then. But most 18-year-olds don't know.
No, it was Scott Parrish back home, Dan Hall back home, Rick Sovey back home, my sister, all these folks that were cheering me on. That they had an inclination of what I was doing, even though I didn't.
Huh. So there was some positive reinforcement and motivation.
I did not want to let him down.
Gotcha.
I did not want to let him down. I'm like, there was, and that was the other thing about my childhood that I want to definitely say that why Grandview is so close to my heart because even though there may have been not so kind words at home, there was definitely enough people in the community that were showing me positive reinforcement and giving me kind words and whatnot. And even though I didn't believe it back then, because you believe the ones that you love the most, their words and these other folks, but I see it now that there was there was a ton of positive reinforcement. And Scott's family, I consider them my family as well, and they consider me part of their family. He's my brother, and even out to his cousins, right? They're like, he's my cousin, and because we were that close. And that's what it was. I did not want to let him. It's like what I write in Tip of the Spear. It's not what you think. Is find that motivation outside of yourself. If it was just myself to please, I would have quit a long time ago.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sucks. It was like a push and a pull. It was the negative things. I want to prove my mother wrong, but I also want to prove these other people right.
Correct.
And do you think? I mean, again, 18. We're still learning. We're still growing. We're still forming our our frontal cortex, and everything is still developing. Do you think you realized it at that time? Was it a conscious thought of like, I don't want to let these people down? Or did it take you a while to realize that, hey, that's what really pushed me? That's what made sure no matter what was happening in my ears, I was going down to 150 feet.
No, if I'd become a doctor, I'd understand those words you used. No, I'm just kidding. But, no,
I don't understand.
I absolutely was making a conscious decision back then. I absolutely did because like I said, if my mother had treated me any differently from 1980, from 1980, what was I, 12, right?
Okay.
My dad left.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't a lot of positive reinforcement from my mom, right? So there was a conscious effort to, like you said, prove the naysayers wrong and prove the cheerleaders right.
Yeah. I think that shows a lot of maturity for an 18-year-old to realize that. And maybe it is part of a function of how you grew up, that you had to you had to mature quickly, right? You had to fend for yourself.
Sure.
And that, that probably helped you. It sounded like you were a old 18, a mature 18.
Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah. So now at 19, then again, you're still 2 years from being legally able to drink a beer, but you've gone through SEAL training.
Yeah.
What was that like, checking into a new team? Your new team. You went to the East Coast, right? What was it like checking in? How did they treat you?
Yeah.
What type of fun hazing?
No, absolutely. So you think there's going to be this parade, right? It's like, woohoo! This guy actually did something. No, man. No. It is like you are scum of the scum, and we are a piece of crap. We haven't done anything that they haven't done already. Yep. As a matter of fact, you haven't even been to the show yet. You haven't even gone and done a deployment. What are the terms? You're still shitting Bud's chow, right? It's like, no, you're right. You're absolutely right.
So they're not the seasoned SEALs that are in your platoon, all right, your team. They're not impressed that you made it through Bud.
What have I done that they haven't already?
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. And reputation's everything in the teams. Mm-hmm. So now it's time to get to work. Now it's time to prove yourself.
So how'd you do that?
I worked my ass off.
Yeah.
Take my beatings, pay whatever debts they said I have to pay. I remember when I first got my credit card, a travel card. It's called a Diners Club. I don't know if that still exists. Right? I'm definitely showing my age, but they used to give us Diners Club travel cards. And the platoon is like, oh, okay, new guy, guess what? You get to pay for all of us for dinner. I'm an E3, right? I'm poor as shit. And it's like, how am I going to pay this off? But that's just how it was. That's part of it. That's just how it was, right? It's humility. And they were right. I'm not saying that they were mean or they were wrong. They were absolutely right. I have to earn my place here. Mm-hmm. They're already there. They were already deployed. They're already started working on their reputation. I'm just starting.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And so from there, you made it, I guess, through the ranks, so to speak.
Yeah.
Started to get more experience. Paid your dues. What was that like? What was the next phase in your career?
Yeah. So now you want to be the team guy that everyone wants in a platoon. You do. You just do. That's what you work for. I was fortunate to get to SEAL Team 4 when SEAL Team 4 had a lot of guys that were some of the plank owners. A plank owner is someone who is the part of the first crew at a command as it's being stood up of SEAL Team 6. So their mentality was, we're going to train like we train over at SEAL Team 6, and this is big boy rules, and so very fortunate, and very fortunate that there were still enough Vietnam vets. We had Pi Piana, J.J. Josams, Master Chief Keith, Master Chief Davis. They're all Master Chiefs, but because they earned it.
Yeah.
Doc Jones. I could go on, and I apologize to all of the folks that I'm forgetting, but that real life experience, and I'm going to teach you the way you need to be taught. I'll never forget the first time that live rounds went over my head in a high threat area, right? It was uneventful because we were used to that happening already in training.
And that's the reason for the training.
Absolutely.
For the intense training.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so this was the mid '90s, right? As your
So early '90s. So
early
I
'90s.
got to SEAL Team 4 in '87,
Okay.
and I left Team 4 in '91, December of '91,
And
to go to 18 Delta, because back then you had to earn your schools.
okay.
And after 18 Delta is when I went to SEAL Team 6.
Okay.
Yeah, I went to boats against my will, but you know, at that time it was you go where we send you.
Right.
Um, and I'm glad I went to boats because I learned another skill. 'Cause here's the other thing about being a corpsman in the teams is I'm not saying that we had it rougher, but we had it rougher because in Vietnam, you know, they needed docs, they needed corpsmen, and not a lot of corpsmen were making it through training. I mean, think about it. It's like, hey, you could live this life of suck, or you could go work in a hospital.
Yeah.
Where all the girls are at.
Yeah. Sleep in a
Hold on a
bed with warm
second.
sheets every night, or
Yeah.
in the jungle.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so they incrementally would introduce them to training, and they didn't go through all the training. So these old Vietnam vets, although as awesome as they were and the information that they passed, they still had it in their heads that docs didn't go through all the training, even though we did.
Right.
By the time, you know, Sean Chittick and Cag Cagnoni and Rodney Magellan went through, and Jim Brixey, and, you know, we're all corpsmen. We went through all the training. But when the instructors are like saying, "Oh yeah, well you're a doc, you know, you didn't go through all the training," we had to work harder to prove ourselves.
Yeah.
And because again, reputation is everything. Now I go to boats, I get sent to boats, and there's that perception in boats too, because there was a time period when SEALs weren't driving the boats; they were Seabees, and so get looked at a little bit differently. Even though I'm looking at guys in the assault team, it's like, mother effer, I put you through training at Team 4. Why are you looking at me like I'm a stranger? What's wrong with you? Right? So just working harder to just prove myself, and hey, I could do this. Oh, and by the way, what you're doing, I could do it as well.
Well, one funny story, and I'm not going to tell the story because they're going to have to pick up your book, Tip of the Spear, but the foreword to your book, it's written by a retired captain, I believe.
I believe commander.
Yes. So a retired SEAL officer who's very, very well respected in the teams. Another been there, done that guy. And he tells a hilarious story, I think, that is really apropos for the Rodney that I know. And I'm not going to tell the story now, so you got to read the book. Believe me, the forward alone is worth it. But it goes to what you said before, is that you wanted to be the SEAL that everybody else wants in their platoon. It sounds like you worked very hard to achieve that. So you go through all this, but now life's changing, right? You talk about it in your book a lot about you know, the sacrifice that you have to make to be great in whatever it is, whatever your chosen field is, whether it's an author and a publisher, all the great things that you've done, a teacher, you have to make sacrifice. It's how much do you want it? At some point, that sacrifice became a lot for you, and as you were growing a family. So talk a little bit about it. So you were in the Navy, I think, for 14 years active duty, and then you had some decisions to make, right?
That's right. So Bill Clinton, when he was president, they signed a bill to lower the retirement for military folks. Anyone who joined the service after October of 1985, I signed December of 1985, so 2 months late. After 20 years, you were going to get 40% of your base pay. So 40% of my base pay as a SEAL would have been less than half of half of my total pays. So less than a quarter of my total pays, and that would be my retirement. Number one. Number two, because I went to Army medical schools and not Navy medical schools, I was having problems making chief. So as a first-class petty officer I think it's across the services as an E6, at 20 years, you're forced out.
If you haven't made
that's your higher tenure, right? If you don't, that's another thing that people don't realize. If you don't promote, you don't stay in. You know, and when I went in the military, You know, it was like, hey, you're in the military because you're a second class citizen, or you were going to go to jail. You know, that was the perception, right? Or you had a family lineage.
I think that's why my dad went in.
Right? Or you had a family lineage, and it's like you have to go serve because
Yeah.
then we're going to groom you for politics.
Yeah.
Whatever. That's how it was. Middle class ruined it. Now they have rights.
Bastards.
I'm calling my congressman. I don't want to get a haircut. Whatever. So that was the perception back then, and the pay wasn't all that great. You know, when President Trump came in, he did and President Bush, and I'm not getting political here, but you could see it. History shows it that when a Republican is in office, the military is better equipped, is better paid, and better prepared.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fact. You could look it up. You can look it up. You absolutely can. All the way back to Lincoln, and so here I am now, getting forced out. I'll be 38 years old. Here's another factor. If I wanted to go to be a federal law enforcement officer, you could not have 20 years in the military, and you had to be 37 years or younger, because they didn't want you double dipping. They didn't want you getting a military retirement and then going into federal service afterwards.
Yeah.
Right. So all these factors are at play. My wife and I, my beautiful wife and I, we have our first child, our daughter Reagan, in 2000. And so it's like, okay, well, I got to do something, because if I'm going to I go back to SEAL Team 6, I go back to SEAL Team 4, I'm still out in 6 years. I'm out.
Yeah. And then what are you going to do?
And then what am I going to do? Yeah. I can't go to federal law enforcement because I'll have 20 years of service and I'll be too old.
Yep.
So we made a decision to get out. I was going into the U.S. Marshal Service. I met a man, Larry Hominick, great. He was the chief deputy U.S. Marshal out of Denver, Colorado. A friend of mine, Julio Fitzgibbons, had me come out because he became a deputy U.S. Marshal. He said, "Come talk to Larry. Guy's great." Larry's famous, if you ever remember that book, and then later on a movie called Falcon and the Snowman.
I don't think I've seen it.
Yeah. I'm showing my age, but yeah, real good. And Larry was very instrumental in that and all that. And
was he the Falcon or the Snowman?
You know what? He was the U.S. Marshal.
He played the U.S. Marshal.
He was the deputy U.S. Marshal. That's another thing too that people don't realize. It's like there's 92 districts, and the deputy U.S. Marshals are the ones that do the work. The U.S. Marshal is actually appointed by the president.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So you could be a U.S. Marshal one day, right?
I don't know. I might have aged out.
No, they don't care. No, they do. But yeah, so the Deputy U.S. Marshals love that organization, small organization with a lot of different jobs. So you're never doing the same thing every day.
And so in 2000, you said, this is going to be
I'm going to go. Yeah, I'm going to go and do this.
And I think it's important to note, 2000, you've been in the Navy for 14 years now. You've been a SEAL at the tip of the spear.
That's right.
Only wanting probably one thing as an operator in the SEAL teams, which is to go to war, right?
Go to war. That's it.
In 2000, you say, I'm gonna change career path. And I know there was a lot of kind of things that happened, and we weren't sure it was going to, but it did end up happening. You know,
right.
the command tried to get you to enlist for a little bit longer. You said no. You became a U.S. Marshal.
That's right.
And then
I stayed in the reserves.
You stayed in the reserves. Okay. And then 2001, September 11th happens. 2001. Tell us about that day.
Yeah. So my partner and I were on our way to pick up a prisoner in Arizona, and we're doing a transfer of planes in Houston. So from Corpus Christi, Texas, we flew to Houston to get on a plane to Phoenix, and the airport shut down. We noticed all these people crowding around the TVs. And it's like, what's going on? We go and we look, and we start seeing just as the second plane hits the second tower. And I look at my partner. I said, we're going to war. And rightly so, they shut down the airports. And again, and I talk about it a little bit in the book, so I won't go into too much detail. But we make it back to Corpus, and I'm like, hey, I got to get to war. We're going to war.
Yeah. And you're a reservist. You're a SEAL reservist.
That's right.
You just assume, hey, they're going to call me up, right?
Yeah, no,
Hey,
I'm
I'm
a
here.
SEAL reservist. I'm a SEAL Team 6 cat. I'm a 18 Delta medic.
Sniper.
You know, sniper. It's like where
This
are
is
we
what I'm
going?
made for.
That's
Yeah.
right. Point me in the right direction.
Yep.
Let's get after it.
Which way is Afghanistan?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it. And nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. And come to find out that you know, there's a lot of authorities and permissions that need to come down through Congress in order to activate people for any length of time. And then again, this was my ignorance, not knowing that I actually could have reenlisted and they would have held my job for 5 years.
Because you didn't want to reenlist because you were afraid that you were going to lose your job.
Correct.
As a marshal.
That's correct.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you call your old OIC
I call
or
SEAL Team
commanding
4.
officer?
Yeah, SEAL Team 4 at
SEAL Team
Ops.
6.
Yeah. And I call a
Put me
Marine
in,
unit.
coach.
Yeah, I call a Marine unit, and you know they all wanted me, but they just didn't know how to get me outside of me reenlisting.
Yeah.
And again, me not understanding that I actually could have.
So how'd you finally get to war?
So I get a cold call, and it's like, hey man, your name got passed around,
and this cold call, really cold. It didn't even warm up once you answered. You didn't know.
I had no idea.
You
who
left,
it was.
and you still didn't know who it was.
Have no idea who it was.
Okay.
No clue. None. And I asked him one question, and do I get to go to Afghanistan? And it was quiet on the phone for a little bit, and it was a quick yes. And I'm like, send me the tickets.
Yep.
And so they sent me the tickets and got up and went and interviewed, and that's when I found out that it was the CIA, and I definitely negotiated. It's like, well, listen, you know, I'm not giving up a covered position with the Marshal Service to come into a contract position here, so it's got to be a covered position. It's like, oh no, absolutely it is. You're going to be a Blue Badger. You're going to be.
So what does that mean?
A Blue Badger is a CIA employee. A Green Badge is a contractor.
Okay.
The agency uses a lot of contractors. Well, the whole of government uses a lot of contractors.
Yeah.
It's that job security, right? I mean, the whole reason I got out was to have that job security to raise my family. You know, we had a daughter, and I know I needed to work for at least 18 years to get her out of high school.
Yeah.
Right. So, my wife, you know, I give her a lot of credit for this because she, living in her hometown, surrounded by her family, our daughter is the first grandchild of her parents, and she's like, go do what you got to do. Because she knew it meant moving away from the family, and but she also knew that that's who her husband was.
Yeah,
that I had to go, and I made her make me a promise that I didn't want to come home to empty house. So when it got to that point where she couldn't take it anymore, to let me know, and I'll stop. And that was around the 3-year mark of being a GRS agent with the CIA. And she said enough.
Can you talk a little bit about what you did with the CIA?
Yeah. So, global response staff, we, which was really interesting because when I showed up, it was 1 week of onboarding, which, you know, being from the military, we didn't even know what onboarding was, right? But it's definitely, I know why they call it the company, because they treat it like a civilian company. And onboarding, you know, what kind of insurance do you want? Where do you want your money to go? And this is
HR
live
video.
Yeah, HR video. Yeah, you know, don't pinch your friend in the butt, stuff like that, right?
They must have had some special classes for you.
They did.
He's gonna have to. We need more videos for Rodney.
That's right. You need to write this sentence down 1,000 times
on the chalkboard.
I will not pinch anyone in the ass,
unless they ask me to.
Right. And then that weekend, that Saturday at the range, qualifying on all the weapons, because you have to, you know, it's like, hey, Navy SEAL, multiple weapons, you know, different armorers school, instructor this, instructor that. They don't give a shit, right?
Yeah.
It's like, you still got to prove it. You got to qualify, because it's all about that organization's covering their butt, making sure we're qualified in.
I assume there's no problem qualifying.
Yeah, no, piece of cake.
Yeah.
And of course, the jackass that I am, you know, we could use a better weapon. No, just kidding. So then Sunday on a plane, and in Afghanistan, and you know, met up with the team lead that was there, and you know, think we're gonna get briefed, and he's like, "Hey, man, there's some rifles and some body armor in the back of this truck. You know, find what rifle you want and find body armor that fits, and let's go." And what we're doing is we're protecting agency personnel. We're making sure that no harm comes to them. and that was the charter. But early on in Afghanistan in '02, we were very very short-handed, so there was other things that they asked us to do, and we were more than happy to do it. But if you watch 13 Hours, the first part of that movie is a really good uh, example of what we would go through. And everyone they focus on the siege, right? They focus on the siege and having to find ways. But the first part of that movie really really talks to the job.
Yeah, and there are a couple stories in Tip of the Spear
Yeah,
that could read like scenes in 13 Hours.
there is. You're absolutely right.
Which are pretty interesting. Again, I really like the way you tell those stories. When we first started talking about doing this book, right? You said one of the first things you said is, this can't be another SEAL book. This is not, this isn't about Rodney's exploits. This isn't about all the cool things. Like I said at the beginning of the interview, that, I've noticed your humility from the beginning. I'm gonna have to say all the cool stuff that you did, because you won't. But there are some little snippets in there, and I think in most cases you're giving other people credit, or you're using the stories to further establish a philosophy or view that you want the reader to get. So,
That's correct.
I think you did a really good job, and it's very interesting reading those stories. And then, okay, how does it talk about preparation or discipline or any of the other things that you talk about in Tip of the Spear? So,
I want to talk to something, because there's a lot of folks that have this impression that I'm an anomaly SEAL. I'm not. The trident, the pin that we wear on our uniform, you'll find an eagle on that pin, and it's the only eagle that you'll find on any military uniform where its head is down, and that's for humility. That's for humility. I'm not an anomaly. I'm the majority of SEALs, because it is. There's this perception that we're all a bunch of windbags and that we all just want all kinds of attention and this and that. And it's like, and I'm not saying attention's bad. I'm not. And I'm not saying that sharing your stories and sharing because we do have a lot of value to the whole of our country. When you look at the military as 1% of our population, and then the SEALs are less than 1% of the Navy, that's a small group that has a lot of great information and stuff they could pass on. So it's I'm not bashing anyone who wants to talk and share their stories, but at the same time, I do want to say that there is a lot of silent professionals out there that have a lot of great things to share that they won't, because they feel like we're giving up some kind of code of silence or whatnot.
Yeah. And there's certainly no. I mean, you went through the Department of Defense Security Review, as all of our military authors do. There's no. If you're looking for the secret squirrel, secret SEAL stuff, this isn't the book for you. This, you use SEAL stories or your experiences life. The way I look at it is, I think that you use them for two different things in the book. One is to show that you are an authority on this. You can talk to, like what you just said, a big theme of the book is you don't have to be extraordinary to do extraordinary things. And I think that's what you kind of just alluded to. Yeah. So the first part, all these stories, I think, just show that, hey, you're qualified to talk on this. And then, the other reason to use these stories is to show examples for when you've used these different philosophies.
That's true.
And again, to tease it more, we'll get back and we'll definitely talk about Tip of the Spear, what it means, and it's not what you think, and why it's not what you think. I just want to get through your career, which I think we're almost to. So you did the contracting, or excuse me, you were a blue badger, with the CIA. Then you ended up going back into active duty.
Well, my wife said enough, so I actually took a job with Walmart as a executive protection manager. Okay. I know, right? It's who's in Bentonville, Arkansas. My wife was not happy about that, but I explained to her. I said, "Listen."
So you're there to protect like the big wigs at Walmart,
right? The tier ones, absolutely.
Okay.
And I explained to her that it's you don't want me going to war. If I went back to the Marshal Service or any organization I go to in the government, it's a whole of government fight. And as soon as they find out that I have, I'm actually familiar and experienced being down there, they're going to send me down there.
Yeah.
And last I checked, Walmart still hasn't opened up superstore or super center in
Fallujah.
Kabul or Fallujah
Yeah.
or Baghdad.
And
or
the wars have
Tikrit.
broken out on the streets of Benton, is that where Bentonville,
Bentonville.
Arkansas. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So so we went there, and it was very, very surprised of what a great community and what a great place Bentonville, Arkansas was. It really was. 4 seasons, friendly people. It was nice. It was nice. But by then, the word had spread that through friends and whatnot that I was no longer with the CIA. And so some buddies of mine that were doing executive protection for a very influential family. We won't say who that was because I signed a non-disclosure.
Okay.
But reached out and said, hey, come work with us. And I'm like, man, I've been moving my family. I'm tired. They're tired. I just want to raise my family, just some stability. But it is in Washington State. My mother was wheelchair bound by then. She needed some help. So I did listen. I did go and interview because I was able to move my mother in with us. I did accept the job, and we moved my mother in with us for a while before she passed, and that's what took us to Washington. Well, then NSW found out that I was no longer with the CIA, and the phone call went a little something like this. So I need to preface this. Being on the East Coast, most of the East Coast frogs knew who I was. Well, now I'm out on the West Coast, out in Washington State. Man, the West Coast frogs are like, I'm a shitbag.
Yeah.
Right? Who's this Navy SEAL reserve officer who's been hiding out? That's what they're thinking. Mm-hmm. Okay? So I get this phone call. My wife says, hey, this guy's trying to get a hold of you. He says you need to call him right now. My wife and kids are still in Arkansas, and I'm starting my job in Washington. I haven't even moved them yet because it's the middle of school year. Like, all right, I give him a call. And I'm not going to tell you who it is, but it was like this. Hey, man, this is 2006, 2007. I'm trying to remember. No, 2006. Hey, man, I don't know if you know this or not, but there's wars going on, and it's time for you to serve your country.
I assume this is a SEAL.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm like, God damn it. And I'm on the other end of the phone. He doesn't see me, but my head just sinks, right? And
He saw you.
No. This was
in his head, he saw you. That was the reason he said that.
He's like, he had no idea what I was doing. He had no idea that I'd worked with the agency. He had.
I thought he was just guilt tripping you, saying
no. He was guilt tripping me, but he didn't know that. I'm just trying to raise my family. Yeah. I'm trying to just get some stability, and stop going to the war zones. And so I'm like, well, listen, I just started this new job, man. I haven't even been here a month, and can we wait a little bit? You have 29 days to report. Like, can we wait 6 months so I could at least move my family over here?
Now, was this actually a choice at all? Because you were still in the reserves at this point?
I was in the reserves, right?
But was he saying we're forcefully activating you?
That's correct.
You didn't have a choice.
That's correct.
Okay.
And this is more of my ignorance, right? Because I didn't realize that I actually had rights, right? That
in the military, you have rights?
Well, as a reservist, because you're a civilian sailor or soldier or airman or
the
Marine.
Civilian side of you had rights.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so so I'm like, okay, I guess I got a report. So 29 days later, I'm in San Diego, and I go and I meet the guy face to face. And to his credit, he's just like, man, I am so sorry. I had no idea everything you were doing. I please accept my apology. Wow. And I'm like, all right, where am I going? Iraq, Baghdad, where am I going? He's like, no, man, you're going to the Horn of Africa. I was like, oh, man. So Horn of Africa as a task unit commander. And I told him, I said, okay, listen, but when my pump is done here, don't keep me for a whole year just doing crap here. I started a new job, and I still have to move my family and all this other stuff up in Washington State. So so they did. So I did my 6 months down in the Horn, and then rolled back, and I think it was a total of 9 months that I did. and then I you know, demobilized, meaning I'm transferring from active duty back to civilian status, and started my job there in Washington State. Great family, great organization, but it started becoming clear to me that this wasn't going to stop. They weren't going to stop activating me, and so I had another conversation with my wife, and it's like, well, what do we do? You know, I could retire now from the reserves, wait till I'm 60 to draw benefits, or I go back active duty. I do 5 more years, and I'll have 20 active duty years, and I could retire. And so that's what we decided to do. So in 2009, I went back active duty as a lieutenant, deployed again as a cross-functional team OIC officer in charge. And I'm like, all right, Iraq.
Where was that deployment?
I'm like, Iraq, Afghanistan. Yeah, it was Southern Philippines. It's like, all right, we're going to the autonomous region of Muslim Mindanao. Yeah. Yeah. There's where the war on terror is worldwide. But at that time, people just focused on Iraq and Afghanistan. It's like, there's nothing going on anywhere else. No, there's a lot of stuff going on everywhere else. So went and did that and came back and yeah. So thought I only had to do 5 years, and read the fine print, and it's like, well, you're an officer now, and in order for an officer to retire from active duty service, you have to have at least 10 active duty years as an officer.
As an officer.
Yeah. So the 5 years I thought I had to do actually were 9 years that I had to do.
Oh boy.
And by that time, our daughter's graduating high school, and I get promoted to commander. So we decided to do 3 more years to get our son out of high school, and retired in September of 2021 as a commander.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a long career.
It is.
Long, jagged career. And then, so what, about a week later, you decided after retirement, I'm bored, I need to write a book? How'd that come about?
No, it was so after I retired, and going and supporting fundraisers where I can, visiting people, and then just started slowing down. Got offered employment at certain places, old employers, and my wife didn't want to hear about it. She's like, no, we're not moving. I want to stay in Texas. She wanted some stability for a while.
Yeah.
And I knew that my best use date, I have a shelf life. I have shelf life, and before long, those calls are gonna start getting more and more less frequent.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there, and I'm looking at my wife, and she's in the studio right now. Look at me. I'm probably gonna get in trouble for this, but she, I asked her. I said, what's my purpose? And she looks at me and she's angry. She's, what are you talking about? I'm your problem right here. And I'm like, sweetie, it has nothing to do with our relationship. I love you. Our children, I love our children. We have a great family life. That's not what I'm talking about. Yeah. It's for so long, I have earned. And some people would say, well, you're still earning, you're getting a retirement. It's not the same. It isn't.
Yeah.
There's some kind of fulfillment when you go out and you do something, and then you get some kind of compensation back for that, right? And so I just started writing.
You had decades of experience to share with people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, and we hear that a lot from veterans when they get out, right? When you're in the military, I guess you have a singular focus. You have a singular goal. Everybody in theory is in that same, pulling in the same direction, the camaraderie with the other people, like-minded individuals. So that has to be tough once you get out. And all of a sudden that train is stopped. You now no longer have that same singular focus of training and going to war. And
that's true. And it's I need to explain my role at the time, because I went from being operator, supporting operator, to now being commanding officer, and realizing that even though I may not be kicking in doors or pulling people out of bad spots, um, I was affecting the battlefield, the battle space even more because I was sending hundreds of people to war.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting them ready. Right? It's like, what can Rodney actually accomplish in this space compared to the 3, 4, 500 folks that he can send to that space?
Yeah.
Right? And it's not just drill sergeant, do this, do that, get your weapon, clean your weapon, do it. No, it is in the military. We have no HR. We have no human resource, resource, right? It is us. It's the officers. So any family issues they have going on, any personal issues they have going on, any goals that those sailors have they want to reach, we're helping them. We have a job to do. We have a mission to do. But at the same time, there's that human factor that I found was just so intoxicating, being able to help my young sailors achieve their goals, whether that was in the military or outside of the military. I didn't care. I wanted to help them get to where they wanted to go. And when I retired, I'm like, I can't. Who am I helping now?
And so, obviously, writing the book, then you're able to impact even more people, a wider audience at that point, with your plethora of experiences that you've been through. And let's get into the tip of the spear, and it's not what you think, and tell the audience what that means. The tip, because what you just described and what you're about to go into that's the shaft part, right? You'd already been at the tip. You'd been at the shaft. There's all different pieces of a spear.
That's right.
So tell the audience why you named your book that and what that whole philosophy is.
Absolutely. And yeah, I'm no longer depressed from writing that book because of exactly everything you said. That I put it out there. If people want to read it, they want to learn from it, I put it out there. Tip of the spear, it's not what you think. Is that subtitle has a lot of layers. I'm not cut from a different cloth. I told you my background.
Yeah.
Some people would, and I've asked some of my sailors at times, if you guys were to guess, when I was a commanding officer, and when I was a commander in 05, standing up there and all wise, all knowing, and I would ask them, if you guys were to guess what my upbringing was like, what would you think it was? And it's 2 parents, educated, middle class, all this. I was like, nope, on welfare, migrant worker, broke, came in the Navy at the lowest rank possible as an E1. And their eyes just widened. And why am I sharing that with you? Because I sat exactly where you were 20 years ago. I know exactly what you're thinking. I know exactly what you can do. And you can one day be exactly where I'm at right here. I am no different than anybody else. That's number one. Number two, becoming elite, becoming the best of the best, is hard work and sacrifice. Period.
Yeah.
No one said it's going to be easy. Yeah. Certain people have different attributes. Certain people have different qualities that may be easier for them. But there's still something that's going to be hard. And if you don't believe me, go to Bud's. Because I saw some people that were amazing athletes. You tie them up and you put them in the pool, their ass sinks, and they're out. Yeah. They can't relax, and they can't control their emotions. You get people cold, they had enough.
Tapping out, right?
They're done. I'm out. Right? Hard work and sacrifice is what it takes to be the best. It doesn't get easier once you become elite. Once you become the best of the best, it only gets harder. Yes, I'm wiser. Yes, I know how to do things. Yes, I may be able to knock this out quicker.
But you add more to your plate.
Yes, I'm responsible for more. I have a wife now. I have kids now. My body doesn't heal as quickly. And it isn't just SEALs, right? That's your athletes. That's your artists. That's your CEOs. That's your doctors, your lawyers, anyone who wants to be the best of the best. your best teachers out there, everybody, sacrifice, hard work and sacrifice. And I talk about sacrifice because everyone just thinks it's just time. Well, let's qualify that time. It's not just time that you're putting in to something to get better. It's time you're taking away from the people who miss you.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the worst times of my life was when I was working at Walmart and I would get up before my family would get up and I wouldn't come home until after they were asleep. So I told my wife straight up, I'd rather be in war.
Yeah.
I'd rather be at war because at least my children understand that. They don't understand why daddy's home, but we don't get to see him.
Yeah.
Right? These are sacrifices. These are sacrifices that I'm not telling people not to do it. I'm just making you understand, hey, you can. And these are the things you have to discuss with your significant other and your family, that what it's going to take for you to get there and stay there.
And it depends on your priorities.
Absolutely.
You can make that sacrifice if you're willing to. You have to be
Correct.
willing to make the sacrifice. So you have to have it has to be that important to you, whatever it is. And so maybe going to war, that was more important to you. You're willing to make the sacrifice. Your life, you talk about it a lot in the book. The lifestyle is all encompassing. You have to want it. If you don't want it, you're not going to make that sacrifice.
That's right.
And so I think that's a big part of it.
That's exactly right. And everyone who supports you has to be committed as well. And you have to just have those honest conversations, right? And be able to talk to your loved ones and make those decisions together.
Yeah.
Okay. The hardest thing is to walk away from something that you love, absolutely love doing, but I love my family more.
Yeah.
Right.
Priorities.
Absolutely.
At some point.
And but this is another part of the subtitle. It's not what you think, where just because I'm stepping back from here, that doesn't mean I'm not the tip of the spear anymore.
Right.
I'm elite. I'm trying to be the best of the best at being a dad and being a husband.
Right.
Okay? Because there's different levels of success. And one of the main messages I say in the book is you define what success is. Is success how many war zones you go to? Because when you're on your deathbed, who really cares? Can you name any of the heroes from World War II? Can you name any of the heroes from the Vietnam War?
Yeah.
All these other heroes. We thank people for their service. We say thank you and yeah, you're a hero, but we should really thank the people that supported them because they suffered and gave up just as much.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're the ones that are going to be there when we're old. She's the one who my wife has to put up with all the pain I deal with every day. And I'm not asking for sympathy, but it's the wars don't end just because we stop going there.
Yeah. And they're the spear part. We're talking about the tip of the spear, but it's the whole spear, the shaft. You talk a lot about a lot about that in the book.
Yeah.
And you've been on both sides, right? You've been the tip of the spear, you've been the shaft. So what?
That's right.
Tell everybody what the shaft means. What is that? How's that part of the spear?
So it's as simple as this. If I have a spearhead without a shaft, then what is it?
An arrow, a rock,
right?
A sharp rock that you could throw.
And some people have suggested TED Talks and whatnot, and I don't know, I'm not opposed to it, but I think to myself, how would I go up there and explain to people? And visuals always work. And one of the things I thought about is like, okay, take a prop up there. Here's the shaft. Here's a pole that's 6 feet long, and disconnect the spearhead from it. Get some volunteers and give one of them the spearhead and one of them the shaft. What would you rather fight with?
Yeah, I guess if it's a hard shaft, you could go through a whole conversation about it.
Gives you reach.
Yeah,
the shaft gives you reach. It gives you support.
Unless you can throw.
Sure, but you better
time,
hit it. You better hit what you're looking at. And
with the sharp end.
That's right. We focus on the tip of the spear, which is less than 1% of the spear hole. But the reality is that without the rest of the spear, without the spearhead that's doing its role supporting that tip, and the shaft supporting the spearhead, then that 1% is relatively combat ineffective.
Yeah.
It
And
just
they're
is.
complementary. I mean,
Sure.
they're equal. They're worth more than the sum of their parts, right? I'd rather
Yeah.
have, you know, a whole spear than one of, you know, a shaft and the tip.
Yeah.
Together, they're going to be a lot more valuable, obviously.
They are. They absolutely are. And I painstakingly talk about how important everyone's role is in the shaft, because if that shaft has any cracks, if that shaft is too weak, then it affects the tip.
Yeah.
So anyone who thinks that when in any organization, not just the military, this could be a company, this could be your family, anything. Anyone who thinks that their role isn't important, then they just don't get it.
Yeah. They need to. And that's a big message, is that it isn't just about the tip of the spear. It all parts are equally but differently important. And you
Correct.
need to embrace wherever you are. Don't try to be part of the shaft if you're part of the spear, and vice versa. If you want to go to another place, you can work hard and focus on getting there.
Right.
But understand where you are and do the best that you possibly can at that particular part.
That's right. I didn't start out at the tip, but you know what? Every role I had, I worked just as hard. I never took any job for granted. I worked hard at everything I did and again, that's where that drive to prove people wrong, and it didn't matter. It didn't matter that I was cleaning windows or vacuuming floors. It didn't matter that I was cutting asparagus or picking cherries. Never worked in the cotton, but would definitely move to California. I'm sorry, to Texas when it was cotton season, so my brothers and my dad could work in the cotton. But I don't remember me, my sister, or my brother ever complaining.
Wouldn't have done
Right?
any good, I imagine.
No. So again, us being the best little brothers and sisters that we can be, so that it wasn't hard on my parents or the older kids.
Yeah.
It all matters. It all matters, and if people don't think it affects parents, and I thank my kids every day, and they always ask me, why are you thanking us? So because you know what, you did not make me regret my choices. You supported everything that we did.
Yeah.
Everything.
They were the shaft.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And you can see that work ethic. I mean, I saw it with you, writing the book and everything that went into writing, publishing, editing. It's great for me to hear it sounded like it was a kind of a, lethargic process for you when you got out. Talk a little bit. What was the process like for you writing it, and the process, as you're working with an editor at Ballast Books and you're going through the whole process? What was that outside of your comfort zone? Because you certainly put in the effort and the hard work. I'll say that.
Sorry, I got to crack my neck. All right.
I think the mics picked that up too.
Oh, I apologize. Got to put the old bones back in place.
Well, you probably carried some heavy rocks over the years.
No, so when I first started the project, I writing it, I knocked it out. I think I knocked it out fairly quickly.
Mm-hmm.
The first manuscript that I sent to you. Oh, sorry about that. Right, the first rough draft. I worked with the ghostwriter, and she helped pull some stuff out. And I wrote it, and then I would, as the chapter would finish, I'd send it to her. She would ask me some questions, and then I would answer them, and then through that process, we ended up with that first manuscript. But I wrote every word. I did, and then I found out that that's not how ghostwriters are supposed to work.
And just for the record, this was not one of Ballast Books' ghostwriters. This is a ghostwriter he found on his own.
That's correct. That's correct. Because I mean, again, it's through my life and through my times I've realized it's like, well, listen, I'm not an author. I don't know about writing. So what do I know? It's like, well, hire a ghostwriter. They'll help you through the process. So I did, right? Because that's part of being elite, is that you realize where your shortfalls are, what you can do, what you can't do.
Yeah.
Right? You just do. So So I did, and she did. She helped me pull a lot of things out that I normally probably wouldn't have talked about. So then it's like, okay, well now how do I get this published? And so I start looking at things. I have to a la carte it, hire an editor, hire a proofreader, hire a cover person, hire a formatter, hire this. I'm like, isn't there any companies out there? I'm talking to myself, right? Isn't there any company out there? There's a one stop shopping, and so I started looking through that, and I got on an author review page that rank all the companies, and so all the people that were ranked high, I reached out to, and I got some responses from some other folks. Yeah, we'd love to work with you. Well, what'd you like about my book? Well, I haven't read it yet. I'm like, oh, okay. Another publishing house, and I'm not bashing them, right? But this is the process that I went through before I picked Ballast, and another author kept changing the title of a publisher kept changing the title of my book. He kept calling it something else. I forget, but it was not.
So you saying they didn't even know the title?
They didn't even know the title. They didn't even know the title. Yeah. I send the manuscript, or I reach out to Ballast, and Andy, calls me. He's the CEO. This is his company, and not a representative. Andy reaches out. He goes, "Listen, give me a couple of weeks. Let me read it, and I'll get back with you." I'm like, "Right on." Okay, a couple of weeks go by. He reaches back out. Hey, yeah, definitely would love to work with you. It's right in our sweet spot of what we like to publish. Can we do a call? And I said, okay, absolutely. We get on the phone, and so I started asking him about the manuscript, what he liked the most, what he liked, and I'm testing him. And I don't know if you knew this or not, but I was testing you.
I don't think I did.
And he did. And, he's like, oh, I love that, and he's talking about. I was picking out different parts of the book all the way through it, right? The beginning, the middle, and the end, to see if he read it.
Yeah. Well, what I do remember, I loved it. I knew it was raw. It was very raw.
Yeah.
I remembered that and especially from where it is today.
Sure.
It was an excellent manuscript. I thought it had wonderful ideas and thoughts. It wasn't another SEAL book.
Right.
And we say that a lot because I feel like that's something that we work with a lot of team guys, and we're never doing another SEAL book. And I think that's just a testament to you guys and to the interest. But you were writing, had very interesting thoughts, well thought out thoughts, theories, and philosophies that I thought you'd articulated really well. I thought it needed some editing. It was a little rough, a little raw, but it was in great shape. And it was. I was very excited for it.
Yeah. So I tell Andy I made a decision. I'm like, I'll be honest with you, Andy. You're not the cheapest, but I tell you what, you're the most honest, and you actually read my manuscript. So we start, and one of the first recommendations is that we do a developmental edit, and I'm like, okay. So we start working with the developmental editors, and again, I just take for granted that they know my world, that they understand what I wrote down because it's in English. It's in English. I wrote it.
Yeah. Some of the military lingo, not your standard King's English.
Yeah, but they were fantastic in pointing out that hey, okay, what are you really trying to get across here? And let's change this to this, so it's more palatable, and easier understood. And that developmental edit I think went well, and then from there it went to I think proofreading.
Line edit and proofreading.
Line edit and proofreading. Again, his team reaching back out, asking me questions, good questions, and sometimes I got a little frustrated because I'm like, I am speaking English, right? So why is it so clear to me but not to them? And what I realized after a while is it's not so much that it wasn't clear to them, but they were just trying to make it easier to be clear to the masses.
Yeah.
Right. And so that went well. Cover went fantastic. I think the cover that we ended up with is amazing.
We had a lot of different iterations.
Yeah.
I mean, you're great to work with. You knew what you wanted.
Sure.
So we put a million iterations in front of you, and we took elements from each until we have a real cool cover.
Jack Carr actually said that he loved the cover.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. He's
All
like
right.
he absolutely loved the cover.
He
said it probably 5 times. It was an amazing cover.
Wow.
It was an amazing cover. He really liked it. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's good. We got a testimony from Jack Carr without knowing it.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, it really is. I love the way, and you were so instrumental in all the details. I mean, when you look at it, the tip of the spear, the actual tip of the spear with all the different medallions or emblems or different from the different agencies that you've worked with. There's a lot of nuance, or there's a lot of details there.
Yeah.
You know, the image of you with kind of the smoke and the silhouette is
hard to see on purpose.
Yeah.
Because I want people to see themselves as that person.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. And far away, it's, you know, a wide angle.
Yeah. And we made it so hard to see that my own sister's asking me, who's that person? And I was like, are you kidding me? Come on.
Well, we made it like a logo. We made it like a logo too. And, you know, going back to the editing, you, again, same with cover, because you're so good to work with on cover. You knew what you wanted. You listened to our recommendations, but there are times where we had recommendations. You're like, no, that's dumb. We're not doing that. And okay, Roger that. You're the boss.
Yeah.
We're not going to let you do anything that's stupid. We're not going to, you know, we're not going to let you do anything that's against industry best practices or something like that.
Right.
But there is not always a right or wrong answer. You know, we were talking about that before with, you know, with different things with subtitles and things like that. And you knew what you wanted and you could articulate why. And that's the thing, is when we recommend something, we're going to tell you why we're recommending it. And if an author has pushback, we want to know why. We want to make sure we understand their goals. Because really, at the end of the day, our job as the publisher is to make sure that you, the author, you're achieving your goals.
Right.
And so you were really good to work with in the sense that you knew what you wanted to articulate, you knew what your goals were for it. And that's for the manuscript as well. So yeah, it went through a lot of editing with us.
Yeah.
But it still came out exactly in your voice. As you read that book, as I read that book, I can hear your voice.
Yeah.
And it came out very digestible, I think. I mentioned to you earlier, you know, we have a growing and now a larger organization, and not everyone at Ballast Books gets, especially if they're working on the Blue Balloon side or children's side, they don't get to read every single book that we put out. There's just too many. That's just not realistic at this point. But Tip of the Spear is one that I'm going to require everyone to read, because I think that it speaks to everyone at every level, from me as the you know, the CEO and the main leader of the company, down to our directors and down to all the individual contributors who are, you know, the shaft, the tip of the spear, and everyone. It's so important. I think it speaks to all of them. Everybody can take a little piece out about how they can do their jobs better. But it's not just about doing your job better. It's about enjoying your job more, understanding what you're doing, having more purpose. And I think for me, that's from the first time I read that initial rough draft. That's what really spoke to me. So I think you did a wonderful job getting those points across.
Thank you. Absolutely. And I even talk about the hand that guides it.
Yeah.
Right? You know, the hand that guides
that's
the spear, right?
That's equally important.
It is. It absolutely is. And yeah, it was so difficult because I've been asked by a few people, because now we're in the publicist realm. Asking, you know, we're marketing it. Got to get the book. You know, who's your audience? Who's your audience? And I kept replying. I said, I wrote this book for everybody. Yeah. And like, no, you gotta pick somebody. Who's your audience? And it was like, I honestly wrote this book for everybody.
I agree,
100%. And I know there's probably a lot of authors that have said the same thing, but really, it is from the youngest of the young to the most talented athletes out there that are struggling because their fans just can't get enough, and it never ends. And I explain why that is. It's because that's the role when you reside in the tip, then your function is to be elite and to penetrate and create chaos, right? Yeah. Penetrate, create chaos. But when you're in that 1%, when you're elite, it doesn't matter what you've done. We want to know what you're going to do next.
Right.
Yeah. And it doesn't stop until you take yourself away from that position. And the attention that the tip of the spear gets is by something harder, to sharpen it back up and hone it again. Yep. And it's challenging, right? Because you're like, well, hold on a second, you know, I'm here, but they just want more, and they just want more, and they just want more, and they just want more. Well, because that's the position that you're in. Understand that, because when you understand it, I think you can accept it better.
Agreed. And going back to just the audience that you're mentioning, how it's for everybody. There are people, we wear many hats. We go back and forth. At some points we are we are the boss, but then we go home and we're not the boss anymore. The kids are the boss, or the wife is the boss,
right.
and vice versa. And every interaction, you're a different place on that sphere.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're the hand, sometimes you're staff, sometimes. So I think that everybody can take pieces from the book, and whether they're a leader or an individual contributor. I think that's why it resonates with so many people. So. Is there anything you think that we missed? Is there anything that you want readers to know before they go out and get their copy of Tip of the Spear? Available anywhere the books are sold. You can get signed copies at the Ballast Books bookstore as well.
No, I again, I mean, the biggest thing is it's not a book about there I was and
knee deep in grenade
pins.
Pins.
Knee deep, and you talk about the cover because I know one of the things that you were talking about was the medals, and I don't want to give the impression that I've earned medals that I didn't deserve, and I'm probably the most underdecorated SEAL that people are gonna know, right? It's just how it is, but it is a book that I hope you laugh. I hope
that forward
you learn.
That forward will make you spit out your coffee and you're not even drinking any. The forward alone is worth the price of admission. It is hilarious and it sums you up so well.
I did that. I did.
I believe it.
I did. And I hope that when I say learn is just learn about yourself.
Yeah.
I think if more people really learned about themselves, then they really realize how capable they are and how much they matter.
Agreed. And I think that if you really read this book and pay attention to it, I think you can't help but come away with that message.
Yeah.
So good. Rodney, it was a pleasure to have you.
Pleasure was mine.
Go pick up his book, Tip of the Spear. It's Not What You Think. Available everywhere the books are sold.